The old man crashed hard onto the crimson carpet. Guests gasped. Security guards stepped back, as if the man was nothing more than dirt on the ground. A sealed envelope slipped from his shaking hand and slid across the carpet. Right then, a black luxury car stopped at the entrance. The door opened. A tall woman stepped out. The entire crowd suddenly went silent. It was Valeria Kavox. The envelope slid to her feet. She bent down slowly and picked it up. A photograph slipped out. Valeria stared at the picture. Her expression changed. Then she slowly lifted her eyes toward the old man lying on the carpet. The groom shouted angrily behind her, "Throw him out of here." But Valeria raised her hand. The guards froze. She looked directly at the old man and asked one quiet question. "Why are you here?" The old man looked up at her with tired eyes. Then he answered softly, "I came to see the bride." The crowd fell silent, and one question quietly hung in the air. Why would the most powerful mafia queen in the room stop her own red carpet entrance to defend a man everyone else wanted thrown out? That single sentence stopped the entire wedding before it had even begun. A mysterious old man, a powerful mafia queen, and a bride who had no idea that the happiest day of her life was about to uncover a secret buried for 27 years. What did the old man want from Zora Blake? Why did Valeria Kavox suddenly take interest in him? And how could one stranger bring down a wedding filled with politicians, mafia families, and the most powerful people in the city? Stay with me, because what happened inside that hall changed 3 families forever. The Grand Aurelius Hotel had never looked more beautiful. Golden chandeliers lit the massive ballroom, casting warm light over rows of elegant tables covered in ivory cloth and crimson roses. Champagne glasses sparkled under the lights while a soft orchestra played near the stage. Every corner of the hall showed wealth and power. Tonight was not just a wedding. It was an alliance. The bride, Zora Blake, stood near the center of the room surrounded by bridesmaids adjusting the long ivory train of her dress. Her gown shimmered under the lights like fresh snow. Across the hall stood the groom, Lucian Draven, speaking confidently with several powerful men. Among them was his father, Magnus Draven. Even in his old age, Magnus carried the quiet authority of a man who had ruled the underworld for decades. His presence alone made people stand straighter and speak more carefully. Nearby, Senator Alaric Thornfield, Zora's adoptive father, greeted important guests one by one. Cameras flashed as politicians, business leaders, and influential figures arrived. But not all the guests were from the world of politics. Several well-known figures from the criminal underworld were also present tonight. They had all come for one reason. A single name whispered through the room again and again. Valeria Kavox, the Mafia Queen. The moment she arrived, the entire atmosphere would change. Outside the hotel, security guards adjusted their earpieces as a long crimson carpet stretched from the driveway to the main entrance, waiting for her arrival. But before Valeria's convoy could reach the hotel, someone else had already stepped onto that carpet. An old man. And he was asking security only one question. "Can I please see the bride?" The guards stared at him in confusion. Behind them, someone important had just noticed the stranger. The guards looked at the old man from head to toe. His jacket was old but carefully washed. His shoes were worn down from years of walking. In one trembling hand he held a sealed envelope. In the other, he carried a small golden gift box. He did not look dangerous. He only looked tired. "Sir, this is a private event," one of the guards said firmly. "You cannot enter." The old man nodded slowly, as if he expected that answer. "I understand," he said softly. "I only need 1 minute. I just want to see the bride." The guards exchanged confused looks. Inside the glass entrance doors, guests were beginning to notice the strange scene outside. Among them was the groom. Lucian Draven. Lucian frowned when he saw the old man standing near the entrance. The elegant celebration behind him suddenly felt threatened by the presence of someone who clearly did not belong there. He walked outside with long, confident steps. The guards stepped aside. Lucian stopped in front of the old man and looked at him with cold irritation. "Who are you?" he asked. The old man lowered his eyes respectfully. "My name is Stephen Blake," he said quietly. "I came to speak with the bride." Lucian's expression hardened. "You think you can walk into my wedding and demand to see my bride?" Stephen shook his head gently. "I'm not demanding anything," he said. "I just need to ask her something important." Lucian gave a short laugh. Guests were watching now, and he did not like what he was seeing. His voice suddenly turned sharp. "Security," Lucian said coldly. The guards stepped closer. Lucian pointed directly at Stephen. "Throw him out." For a moment, Stephen Blake did not move. The guards stepped toward him, unsure if the order was truly serious, but Lucian Draven's face showed no hesitation. "Did you not hear me?" Lucian snapped. "Get him off this property." Two guards grabbed Stephen by the arms. "Sir, please don't make this harder," one of them muttered. Stephen tried to keep his balance, still holding the envelope and the small golden box. "I only need 1 minute," he pleaded quietly. "Just let me speak to the bride." But Lucian had already turned away in disgust. The guards dragged Stephen down the front steps. Guests standing near the entrance stepped aside as the old man stumbled forward, struggling to keep his footing. Then one of the guards shoved him. Stephen fell hard. His body hit the crimson-red carpet stretched across the driveway, the same carpet prepared for the arrival of Valeria Kavox. A quiet gasp spread through the small crowd watching outside. Stephen groaned as he tried to push himself up. The sealed envelope slipped from his fingers and slid across the smooth carpet. The golden box remained tightly clutched in his other hand. Before anyone could say another word, several black vehicles rolled slowly into the driveway. Engines stopped. The car doors opened. The guards froze. Lucian turned around. The guests standing near the entrance suddenly fell silent. Everyone recognized the convoy immediately. One of the guards whispered nervously, "She's here." From the center car, the door opened. A tall woman stepped out. Valeria Kavox had arrived, and the sliding envelope stopped directly at her feet. The entire entrance became silent. Even the soft music drifting from inside the ballroom seemed to fade. Valeria Kavox stepped forward slowly, the heels of her shoes touching the crimson carpet that had been prepared for her arrival. But the scene before her was not what anyone expected. An old man lay on the carpet. Security guards stood around him awkwardly, and a sealed envelope had slid directly to her feet. Valeria lowered her eyes. For a moment, she simply stared at the envelope. Then she bent down and picked it up. The paper felt old, worn from years of being carried. As she opened it, a photograph slipped halfway out. Valeria pulled it free. The moment she saw the image, her expression changed. The photograph showed a smiling man standing beside two little girls. One girl held his hand. The other stood proudly beside him. The image felt strangely familiar. Painfully familiar. Valeria's fingers tightened slightly around the photograph. Slowly, she lifted her head. Across the carpet, the old man was struggling to sit up. Their eyes met. Behind Valeria, Lucian's angry voice cut through the silence. "Why is he still here?" the groom shouted. But Valeria did not turn around. She continued staring at the old man. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. Quiet. Almost curious. "Tell me something," she said. The old man looked up at her with tired eyes. Valeria held the photograph loosely in her hand. Then she asked him one simple question. "What are you doing here?" The old man swallowed slowly. Then he answered, I came. He paused for a moment. To see the bride. The old man's words seemed to hang in the air. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Valeria Kavox looked down at him, still holding the photograph in her hand. Behind her, guests had gathered near the entrance, whispering to each other in confusion. Inside the glass doors, the bride had stepped closer to see what was happening outside. Zora Blake frowned as she watched the strange scene unfold. Outside, Lucian Draven stepped forward again, clearly losing patience. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Why are we still talking about this man?" He looked directly at the guards. "I told you to throw him out." One of the guards hesitated. "But sir, Miss Kavox." Lucian turned sharply toward Valeria. "With respect, Miss Kavox," he said stiffly, "this man has no business here." Valeria remained perfectly calm. She slowly handed the photograph back to the old man. Then she noticed something else in his hand. The small golden box. Her eyes rested on it briefly, but she said nothing. The old man carefully placed the photograph back inside the envelope. Around them, the guests continued whispering. From inside the doors, Senator Alaric Thornfield stepped outside with his wife Helena beside him. "What is going on here?" the senator demanded. Lucian gestured toward Stefan. "This man claims he came to see the bride." Helena Thornfield looked horrified. "That is unacceptable," she said sharply. "Remove him immediately." Valeria raised one hand. The whispers stopped. She looked toward Zara standing near the doorway. Then she spoke calmly. "He says he came to see you." She turned back to the guards. "Bring him inside." The crowd gasped. But the bride's reaction was even stronger. The grand ballroom fell into uneasy silence as the doors opened. Two guards walked in slowly, guiding Stefan Blake between them. Behind them followed Valeria Kavox, calm and composed as always. Whispers spread instantly across the hall. Guests leaned closer to each other, trying to understand why a poorly dressed old man was being brought into such an important wedding. At the center of the room, Zora Blake stood frozen in her wedding gown. Her eyes moved from the old man to Valeria. "What is this?" Zora demanded sharply. "This is my wedding day. Why is this man here?" The room grew quiet again. Valeria stepped forward calmly. "He says he came to see you," she said. Zora looked stunned. "Me," she replied. "I've never seen him before." Behind her, Senator Alaric Thornfield stepped forward angrily. "This has gone far enough," the senator said. "My daughter will not be disturbed by strangers." Helena Thornfield nodded in agreement. "Exactly, remove him at once." But Valeria did not move. Her voice remained calm and steady. "In my world," she said quietly, "information matters." She turned toward Stefan Blake. The old man stood nervously under the bright lights of the ballroom, still holding the envelope and the small golden box. Valeria looked directly at him. "You said you came to see the bride," she said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Now tell us why." Every guest in the hall waited. Stefan swallowed slowly. Then he began to speak. 27 years ago. The room became completely silent. My two daughters disappeared. Stefan Blake stood quietly in the middle of the grand ballroom. Every eye in the room was on him. His voice was soft, but the silence around him made every word clear. 27 years ago, he said slowly, I had two daughters. He paused, glancing down at the envelope in his hand. Their mother had died 4 years earlier in an accident. After that, it was just the three of us. A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Stefan continued. I worked as a mechanic. Life was simple, but my girls were everything to me. His fingers tightened slightly around the golden box. One summer, I decided to take them on a short vacation. I thought it would make them happy. For a brief moment, a faint smile crossed his face. They laughed the entire trip. But the smile quickly faded. On the way home, our car broke down on a quiet road outside the city. The room felt colder now. I stepped out to check the engine. Stefan's voice lowered. That's when the cars arrived. Several guests exchanged uneasy looks. They surrounded us. Men with guns stepped out. His breathing grew heavier as he remembered. I tried to fight them, he said quietly, but there were too many. The ballroom remained completely silent. They beat me until I couldn't move. Stefan lifted his head slowly. And when I woke up, his voice trembled. Both my daughters were gone. Gasps spread across the hall. Stefan looked directly at Zora Blake. I searched for them for 27 years. He raised the golden box slightly. And then I saw your face in the newspaper. The room held its breath. You look exactly like my youngest daughter. Zora felt her heart race. But Valeria asked the next question. Then what is in that box? The question hung quietly in the air. Every guest in the ballroom watched as Stefan Blake slowly lowered his eyes to the small golden box in his hands. For a moment, he did not move. Then he opened it. The lid lifted with a soft click. Inside, under the bright chandelier lights, 2 diamond necklaces began to sparkle. A quiet murmur spread through the hall. Stefan carefully lifted the box so everyone could see. These belonged to their mother, he said softly. His voice carried both pride and sadness. They were given to my daughters by their grandmother the day they were born. He looked at the necklaces for a moment before continuing. My wife kept them safe for years. Several guests leaned closer, listening carefully. She used to take this box out sometimes and show it to the girls, Stefan said. A small smile touched his tired face. She told them one day they would wear these necklaces on their wedding day. Across the room, Valeria Kavak stood very still. Something about those words stirred a faint memory inside her mind. A woman's gentle voice. A small golden box. 2 little girls standing beside her. But the memory was distant, almost lost. Valeria slowly folded her arms as she watched Stefan. Then she asked the question that changed the atmosphere of the entire hall. If your daughters were taken, she said calmly. Who took them? Stefan's face grew serious. He closed the golden box carefully. Then he spoke a name that made several powerful men in the room suddenly look at one person. Magnus Draven. The room fell silent, and Lucian's father slowly stood up. For a moment, the ballroom felt frozen. Every head slowly turned toward the same man. Magnus Draven. The aging mafia boss sat at the front table beside his son. His sharp eyes moved from Stefan Blake to the golden box and finally to the photograph still clutched in the old man's hand. Then Magnus stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the marble floor. You are mistaken, he said coldly. His voice carried easily across the silent hall. From what hell would I know such an old fool? Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Magnus took a slow step forward, his presence filling the room. Do you even understand the name you just mentioned? He continued. Men have died for saying it without reason. Stefan Blake did not step back. He simply shook his head. I never knew you personally, Stefan replied quietly. I was only told that the gangs who attacked my family worked under a powerful man. A tense silence followed. Then Stefan raised the photograph. This is all I have left from that night. Magnus's eyes moved to the picture. For a brief second, something flickered across his face. A memory. Long ago, during a criminal deals, a young girl had been brought before him. The girl had been holding a photograph. The exact same photograph. Magnus's expression darkened slightly. Before he could speak again, another voice entered the silence. Calm. Controlled. Valeria Kavak's. She slowly reached into her coat. Then she pulled something out. Another photograph. And held it up for everyone to see. The room went completely still. In Valeria Kavox's hand was another photograph. She walked slowly towards Stefan Blake and held it beside the one he carried. Gasps spread across the hall. The two pictures were identical. The same smiling man. The same two little girls. For the first time since entering the hall, Stefan looked truly stunned. He stared at Valeria. "How did you get that?" he asked quietly. Valeria studied the photo for a moment before answering. "I have carried it since I was a child." Her voice remained calm, but there was something colder beneath it. She looked up slowly. "I was taken from my family many years ago," she continued. "Another man raised me." Across the room, Magnus Draven narrowed his eyes. A memory had returned to him now. Many years ago, during a deal between criminal families, a small girl had been brought forward. She had been holding a photograph. He remembered the other mafia boss who took interest in the child. Dominic Vargan. Magnus spoke carefully. "I remember a girl," he admitted slowly. "She was taken during a deal." Several guests leaned forward, listening. Dominic Vargan said he liked the girl. He said he would raise her as his only child. The hall remained silent. Stefan Blake stared at Valeria, trying to understand what this meant. But Valeria did not look at Magnus anymore. Her eyes had shifted toward the bride. "Zora Blake." Then Stefan spoke again. "There is one more thing," he said quietly. "Something only my daughters would have." Valeria's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what is that?" she asked. Stefan lifted his hand slowly. "A mark," he said. "A crescent-shaped mark on the neck." And suddenly, Zora reached up and touched her neck. The moment Stefan mentioned the mark, a strange tension filled the ballroom. All eyes slowly turned toward Zora Blake. Without thinking, Zora lifted her hand and touched the side of her neck. Her fingers rested on a small spot just below her ear. She had always known the mark was there. But until this moment, it had never meant anything. Now the entire room was staring at her. Zora lowered her hand slowly. "What kind of mark?" she asked, her voice slightly unsteady. Stefan stepped forward one small step. "A small crescent," he said gently. "The same mark their mother had." Guests leaned closer, whispering. Zora looked toward her adoptive parents, confused. Senator Alaric Thornfield shook his head immediately. "This is ridiculous," he said firmly. "Coincidences happen." But Stefan continued quietly. "My wife used to call it the moon blessing." The words echoed strangely in the room. Across the hall, Valeria Kavox had not moved. Her eyes were fixed on Zora. Then slowly, Valeria lifted her own hand. Without saying a word, she brushed her dark hair away from the side of her neck. The crescent-shaped mark became visible under the chandelier lights. A sharp gasp spread through the hall. Two identical marks. In the same place. On two women standing only a few steps apart. Zora stared at Valeria in disbelief. Stefan Blake's breathing became unsteady. For 27 years, he had imagined this moment. But no one in the hall spoke. Because one question remained. If they were truly sisters, then what would happen to the wedding? The ballroom remained silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Zora Blake stared at the small crescent mark on Valeria Kavox's neck, then slowly touched her own again as if hoping it would disappear. But it did not. The marks were the same. Stefan Blake's eyes filled with tears he had held back for decades. "My girls," he whispered. His voice trembled as he took a step closer. "I called it the moon blessing," he said softly, "because their mother believed it meant they would always find their way back to each other." Zora's breathing became uneven. "This can't be real," she said quietly. She looked toward her adoptive parents, searching for answers. Senator Alaric Thornfield stepped forward immediately. "This is nothing but a story," he said sharply. "A coincidence of birthmarks and old photographs." But Valeria's voice cut through the tension. Calm. Steady. And the photograph, she asked. Her eyes moved slowly across the room until they rested on Magnus Draven. And the memory he just admitted. Magnus remained silent. Zora looked between them all, confusion and fear filling her eyes. Then she turned slowly. Her gaze landed on the man standing beside her. Lucian Draven. The groom. The man she was about to marry. Lucian's face looked pale. He took a small step toward her. Zora, he said quietly, I swear I didn't know anything about this. The room held its breath. Zora looked down at the engagement ring on her finger. Then she slowly lifted her hand. And everyone watched what she would do next. Zora Blake stared at the ring on her finger. Only minutes earlier, it had meant a future filled with celebration, love, and power. Now it feels heavy. Too heavy. Around her, the ballroom remained silent. Politicians, mafia leaders, and wealthy guests all waited to see what she would do. Lucian Draven stepped closer. Zora, listen to me, he said carefully. I didn't know anything about this. His voice carried a rare hint of desperation. My father never told me. Zora slowly lifted her eyes to meet his. You didn't know, she repeated softly. Lucian shook his head. I swear it. Behind them, Magnus Draven remained still, his expression dark and unreadable. Stephen Blake stood quietly nearby, his tired eyes watching his daughters for the first time in 27 years. Zora's heart felt torn between two worlds. One world had raised her. The other had just returned to her. Her hand trembled slightly. Lucian noticed. Zora, please, he said gently. This doesn't have to change anything between us. But before she could respond, another voice spoke. Valeria Kavox. Cold. Sharp. Does it not? She asked. Her eyes locked on Lucian. The empire your father built, she continued quietly, was built on the suffering of many families. Her gaze shifted briefly toward Stephen Blake. And one of those families is standing right here. Lucian lowered his eyes. The silence in the hall became unbearable. Then Zora slowly slid the ring from her finger. No one dared breathe. Because the next moment would decide everything. Zora Blake held the engagement ring between her fingers. The diamond sparkled under the ballroom lights. For a moment, it felt like the entire world had stopped moving. Lucian Draven watched her closely. Zora, he said quietly. But she did not answer. Her eyes moved slowly across the room. First to Stephen Blake, the tired old man who had just revealed himself as her father. Then to Valeria Kavox, the powerful Mafia Queen who might be her sister. Two people she had not known existed only moments ago. Two people who were suddenly part of her life. Zora closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, they looked clearer. Stronger. I believe you, she said softly to Lucian. Lucian blinked in surprise. You do. Zora nodded slowly. I believe you didn't know. Lucian's shoulders relaxed slightly. But Zora's voice changed as she continued. However, the word hung heavily in the air. That does not erase what your father did. Every eye in the hall turned toward Magnus Draven. The old mafia boss stood silently, his expression dark. Zora looked back at Lucian. This wedding cannot continue. Before anyone could react, she released the ring. It slipped from her fingers. The sound of metal striking the marble floor echoed loudly through the silent hall. The ring rolled slowly across the floor and stopped near Magnus Draven's shoe. The wedding was over. But Valeria Kavox had not spoken her final words yet. And when she did, the entire empire of Magnus Draven would begin to collapse. The ring lay on the marble floor. No one moved to pick it up. The silence in the ballroom had turned heavy, almost suffocating. Magnus Draven slowly looked down at the ring near his shoe. Then he lifted his head again, his expression hard and cold. "This is nonsense," he said calmly. He turned toward the guests. "You are all letting a stranger's story destroy a wedding." Several people shifted uneasily. But before anyone could answer, Valeria Kavak stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, yet every person in the room heard it clearly. "Is it nonsense, Magnus?" Magnus narrowed his eyes. "You think you know something about my past?" Valeria's gaze never wavered. "I know enough." She turned slowly toward the crowd of powerful guests. "For years," she said, "I have investigated the criminal networks that once controlled this region." The whispers started again. Valeria continued. "Trafficking routes, drug shipments, illegal businesses hidden behind respectable companies." Magnus's jaw tightened. Valeria's eyes grew colder. "All of them are connected to one name." She looked directly at him. "Magnus Draven." Several politicians exchanged worried looks. Senator Alaric Thornfield stepped back slightly. Valeria reached into her coat and removed a small folder. "These are records," she said calmly. "Witness statements, financial trails, evidence gathered for years." Magnus's voice suddenly rose. "You have no power here." But Valeria simply closed the folder slowly. "You're wrong." At that exact moment, the ballroom doors opened again, and several uniformed officers stepped inside. The doors of the ballroom opened wide. Several uniformed officers stepped inside, followed by two investigators carrying official documents. The quiet murmur among the guests instantly died. Every eye turned toward Magnus Draven. For the first time that evening, the powerful mafia boss looked uncertain. One of the officers walked forward and unfolded a document. "Magnus Draven," he announced clearly, "you are under arrest for multiple counts of human trafficking, organized crime, illegal financial operations, and conspiracy." A wave of whispers spread across the hall. Magnus let out a short laugh. "You think you can arrest me here," he said coldly. His eyes swept across the room, searching for the powerful allies who had protected him for years. But something had changed. Several politicians quietly stepped away from him. Business leaders avoided his gaze. Even some members of the underworld turned their backs. His empire had always depended on fear and loyalty. Now both were disappearing. Valeria Kavaks watched silently as the officers moved closer. Magnus's expression hardened. "You think you've won," he said darkly. He looked directly at Stephen Blake. "In my world, weak people lose their children." The cruel words echoed across the hall. But this time, no one supported him. The officers stepped forward and placed handcuffs around Magnus Draven's wrists. For the first time in decades, the man who once ruled the underworld was powerless. As they led him toward the door, Lucian Draven stood frozen. His father's empire had collapsed in a single night, and the wedding that was meant to unite two powerful families had ended in ruin. But another moment still waited quietly behind the chaos. A moment Stephen Blake had dreamed of for 27 years. The ballroom slowly began to empty. Guests whispered as they left, still trying to understand everything they had just witnessed. The grand wedding that was meant to unite powerful families had ended in silence and shock. In the middle of the quiet hall, only a few people remained. Stephen Blake stood beside the two women he had searched for nearly his entire life. For a long moment, none of them spoke. Then Stephen slowly opened the small golden box again. The two diamond necklaces sparkled softly under the fading lights of the chandeliers. His hands trembled slightly. "I kept these safe all these years," he said gently. His voice was filled with emotion. "Your mother believed one day both of you would wear them on your wedding day." Zora Blake wiped a tear from her cheek. Everything she believed about her life had changed in a single evening. Valeria Kavaks stood quietly beside her, her usual calm expression softer than anyone had ever seen before. Stefan carefully lifted one necklace from the box. He placed it gently around Zora's neck. Then he lifted the second necklace. For a moment he hesitated, looking at Valeria with eyes full of love and regret. "Your mother waited for this day," he said softly, "even if she never lived to see it." Valeria lowered her head slightly. Then Stefan placed the necklace around her neck. For the first time in 27 years, the Blake family stood together again. But one quiet thought remained in Zora's mind. If her life had changed so suddenly tonight, what would tomorrow look like? Life does not always reveal its truths gently. Sometimes it waits for years. Sometimes it waits for the exact moment when people believe everything in their lives is already decided. That night, a wedding filled with power, wealth, and influence was supposed to unite two great families. Instead, it revealed something far more important: truth. Many people in that hall had judged Stefan Blake the moment they saw him. They saw worn clothes, tired eyes, and an old man who did not belong in a place of luxury. But none of them knew the pain he carried. None of them knew the love that had kept him searching for 27 years. And none of them knew that the man they pushed onto the red carpet was simply a father who refused to give up on his children. In the end, power and wealth could not protect the man who built his empire on cruelty. Magnus Draven lost everything the moment the truth came into the light. But the man who had lost everything long ago gained something far more valuable: his family. Sometimes life teaches us that the people we overlook may carry the deepest stories. Sometimes kindness in a single moment can change everything. And sometimes, no matter how long it takes, the family finds its way back together. Because love does not disappear with time. It only waits for the moment when it can finally return home. If you were Zora Blake, would you have ended the wedding the moment you discovered the truth? Or would you have given Lucian a chance to prove he was different from his father? Tell me in the comment and subscribe for more.